Yeah, lovely scenery right there. So, depending on how you wake up today, it shows you the road is all clear for you to get out there and get some businesses done wherever you are, whatever part of the country you're watching us from this morning. So, yes, indeed. But here in Abuja, it's 24 degrees centigrade. Very, well, rains are here. Good morning, everybody. Welcome to Sunrise Daily. I'm Chamberlain Oso.
And I'm Kayla Magwa. Very happy to be here with you all this morning.
Yeah. So that is what they call Kofa Nasarawa in Kano City, precisely. So, quite an interesting place. Have you been there before?
Oh, yes, of course. I started my broadcasting in Kano. And it's one of the busiest cities you'll ever be to. It's one of those places where you learn a lot when you're in Kano. You know, there's something we call Kano, Tumbengiwa.
Huh.
It's the stomach of the elephant. It's the house of all. You know, very lovely city, rich history, lots of things to do there. Business in Kano. I love this city.
Ayo, I'm not going to ask her if she ate it. If she ate the name you call.
You know,
I'm calling my own name.
You know, I gotta say this. I can imagine someone seeing that long shot, Kayla, and asking, "Wait a minute, is this Kano?" Well, yes, it is Kano City. It is a beautiful city. To be honest with you, Kayla, my first and last visit to this beautiful city right here before me was in 1988. So I'm very certain it's not anything close to what it is now. Was it 1988? Yes, 1988. It was a very, very long time ago. Most certainly way better developed than than now than it was at the time. And this is definitely an eye-opening experience for some people, wouldn't you say? Good morning, I'm Ayo Makinde. Welcome to Sunrise Daily.
All right, yes, indeed, Ayo. This is going to be happening from your end in terms of what to expect on business news this morning. So, I know many still somewhat fixated on that double-digit interest rate. Goodness me, but
absolutely,
we get the highlights of the oil prices hitting Nigeria's budget benchmark. We'll talk about that today on business.
Absolutely.
So let's go ahead and take you through some of the dailies here today. So here are some of the dailies we've got for you here today, and we'll start with Vanguard newspaper. FG's failure to make fresh offer stalls wage talks as a big lead on the front page here. And beneath that one, you find government plans 6.6 trillion naira supplementary budget to fast-track economic growth. Vanguard so reports here today. Daily Independent, importers lose 200 billion naira to two-day strike, ascribed to freight forwarders. We'll have a look at Nigerian News Direct. Alleged money laundering. Kaduna Assembly indicts El-Rufai for embezzling 423 billion naira abuse of office. The writer here says, tells EFCC security agencies to investigate ex-governor, other cabinet members. Orders contractors to refund 36.4 billion naira for uncompleted projects overpayment. From there on, you get to see the Nigerian Tribune here. Alleged money laundering, also the theme. El-Rufai kicks as Kaduna Assembly wants his government tried. So that's what you find right there. And then Daily Trust, different tangents. Northern senators, Magban reject bill restricting herders movement. That's how they lead here today. New Telegraph, reps to FG. We want living, not minimum wage for workers. So that's then on to the Guardian newspaper. Cautious optimism as FG unveils new fiscal deals to revive economy. They also have a bit of minimum wage here, but it's in the just beneath that lead story, which you get to find right there on the front page of the paper here today. And here we've got Business Day. Manufacturers turn lemons into lemonade with Naira devaluation. Those are your headlines.
I mean, the New Telegraph is standing out for me this morning. And I know everyone has been talking about the minimum wage, but it's a very important conversation when it comes to the living wage.
Yeah.
You know. So apparently, from the New Telegraph, we're seeing this morning the reps to federal government, we want a living, not minimum wage for workers. And it's very instructive because, you know, in England, for instance, there is a living wage. It's £11 something, £11 20 something. Per hour. You know, that is the living wage. The concept is, look, everything is hard. Let's see if we can bring out the most level of productivity from workers as we battle with a strange economy. So, I mean, it's something that we should start to think about as a country. But, you know, interesting there, more on pages 3, 5, and 28 of the New Telegraph.
So that means that template, I think, is expected to be submitted to the president today by the
Minister of Finance. Yes.
So we'll see what that will be about and how they proceed moving forward with that particular matter. But there are also some perspectives about this matter which has got to do with subsidy, which we'll focus on as we progress on the program here today. So you just have to stay on with us on that one. Ayo.
Take this morning, Chamberlain, is on the front page of Business Day newspaper, particularly in the light of the fact that manufacturers are turning lemons into lemonade with Naira devaluation. Well, whatever that means, you want to check it right there on the front page of the paper. The rest of it continues on the inside pages. My appeal is that in the face of all of this conversation around, you know, higher or increasing costs of production. By the way, as Comrade Asuguni said yesterday, we should view salaries, wages as cost of production, not just some emoluments we're giving to some people to offer services to an organization. How do we ensure that this not just continues, but actually adds to the reevaluation, the higher productivity for Nigeria? That's a very, very instructive thing, if you ask me. So manufacturers are finding a way to ride the tide. Great. How about micro, small, and medium enterprises? Are they also able to ride the tide? What's the assurance we have that exports are not going to be cheaper than locally produced goods and services? What is the ease of doing business index in Nigeria now looking like? I think this all factor in significantly, if you ask me, to what the economy is going to be for everyone. Let's not forget, we're not building just for today. We're building for the future. But we have to survive today before that future comes. It's back to you, Chamberlain.
Yeah, and much as, yes, you know, reports about the failure for government to perhaps play their part as of yet appear to have stalled the negotiations, as some of the dailies are reporting here today. But we also we understand that negotiations will resume later today with the Tripartite Committee and Labour when they get back to the negotiating table. But I know the component of states, what they bring to the table will also be of huge concern in terms of the policies that exist in the state, how easy or difficult is it for businesses to thrive in those states. Do you have states who even waive certain taxes to encourage or attract investors, as we see in several other areas? Those are initiatives. I mean, those states, they should know. If they don't, I take it for granted that they do run like businesses that have got to be profitable, because after all, they all went out there to campaign for these things.
Absolutely. So. In fact, I think that's one of the things about this situation is that it has made us focus on our state governments right now. What are you doing? How are you helping your state? Is it just about these allocations? What are you doing in your state? And it's very instructive because it's people now who are looking at them. It's no more journalists. It's no more, newspapers trying to write. No. The people now. have to start looking at state governments and saying, what are you doing to generate revenue in this place? And when you do collect federal allocations, where does it go to? The accountability has started, and I'm really glad about that. It's important that states start to be able to fend for themselves. I know it's hard, but they have to find a way. That's why you're in power. That's why they elected you. You weren't elected to tell us what the problem is. You were elected so you could fix the problem. So it's important that this has started, and I'm really glad that the conversation has started on this matter.
All right, so we'll see how much of that will also feature here today as we progress. So stay on with us. We will be right back.
Following the inauguration of commercial operations of the Abuja Rail Mass Transit System by Mr. President and his grant of 6 months free train ride for all train commuters, train services have commenced in earnest since Thursday the 30th of May as follows. Train departs Metro Station for Airport Train Station 8 a.m., 10 a.m., 3:30 p.m. and 5:30 p.m. daily. Departs Airport Train Station for Metro Station 8 a.m., 10 a.m., 3:30 p.m. and 5:30 p.m. daily. Second train departs Edu Train Station for Bazango Train Station 8:40 a.m., 10:40 a.m., 4:10 p.m. and 6:10 p.m. daily. Depart Bazango Train Station for Edu Train Station 7:30 a.m., 9:30 a.m., 3 p.m. and 5 p.m. daily. For more information, visit our various train stations. Enjoy a world of safe, affordable and comfortable transportation system. FCT Administration Announcer.
There's a lot of fear in the journey towards building wealth, especially in an ever-changing economy like ours. And you know why that is? It's because navigating the world of investments without facts and insights is like walking in the dark. But that fear stops now. Opportunities open up to you when you have a trusted guide. Someone with over 28 years of experience advising individuals, corporates, and governments to achieve their dreams through strategic and well-timed investments. That someone is AfriInvest. The journey of 1,000 miles is easier when you have a trusted guide and partner who knows the way. So, take the first step. AfriInvest, simplifying investments, creating wealth.
Welcome to our house. I'm Melinda. Coming up on today's episode of the program. Life is a stage. A bold canvas. On it. Spring some rhymes while at it. Then enjoy it on Art House. We see life in beautiful curves, crafts, colours, and the most exciting forms. Join us as we savour intriguing sights and sounds at these times. Art House, life is art.
Big tech wasn't really here. What have they seen in the past 10 years, which is making all of them want to put their HQ here?
If you're a business that sees itself going global, we'll definitely need some sort of like boosts. We need to tap into those existing networks that these big tech companies do provide.
Is there a downside to big investment in Africa?
It's a tricky question.
We want to be like Amazon, we want to be like Google. Like, this is not, we are not looking to sort of be just another player.
For me, big tech is something highly controversial. I see the value of it, but I also see that Africans should stop playing second fiddle to some of these organizations and have the confidence to start building our own technology.
We've seen how we are using the limited resources we have to solve real problems. They've seen indigenous tech startups achieving things that took them years to figure out.
All right, welcome back to Sunrise Daily. We're going to start our conversation from the developments in Kaduna, where the Kaduna State House of Assembly did adopt a report by the Ad Committee asking that they investigate the former government, the former administration led by Madam Nat'l El-Rufai. So, well, this morning we're joined by Professor Mike Ozekome, Senior Advocate of Nigeria. He's a visiting professor for Afebabalola University. Good morning, Prof. Good to see you. Been a while.
Good morning, my brother.
Thank you for joining us.
And my sister, good morning. Welcome, all Nigerians.
So, quite a number of issues we'll have to discuss today, Prof. So,
Nigeria is a living conversation, never ending.
Yeah, that's the interesting bit.
But it's always better to judge rather than to war.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
So, let's start off from this Kaduna matter, because quite a lot of people don't understand what's going on, because you have a lot of background about both gentlemen, the current governor and the former governor. And as a matter of fact, many thought that considering what they know about both of them, how cordial the relationship had been over time, they're surprised to see or to read about what is going on, so they can't exactly place it. So perhaps we'll let you tell the story about the background and what your impression is of what is going on right now.
Well, I just want to say that what God has joined together, politics always put asunder, because the stakes are always high. And man by nature wants to dominate. If you read Niccolo Machiavelli, that we have come to identify with the Machiavellian philosophy, he says in a nutshell that the end justifies the mean. It simply means that it's like the Hobbesian state of nature, animal kingdom. That is, you want to dominate, you want to assert, you want to throw your power around, because power itself is an aphrodisiac, an intoxicant. The more of it you have, the more of it you want. So I will look at it from that angle in analyzing what is going on in Kaduna, because I wouldn't say that I'm not close to both of them, El-Rufai and Ubasani, but I think I'm closer to Ubasani, the present governor, my very good friend. I recall that in 2005, it was Ubasani who actually called me to defend El-Rufai. I defended that case pro bono. El-Rufai had been indicted by the Senate and banned from holding office for 10 years because he had exposed the then Senate concerning corruption and their demands for bribe during the BPE exercise. So the Senate got angry, took umbrage, and then decided to ban him for 10 years. I went to court and got the indictment and the ban quashed at the Federal High Court, Abuja. They appealed. I went to the Court of Appeal and won the case. And when El-Rufai returned from abroad, from his own self-imposed exile, and he was being tried, Ubasani again called me with Balarabe, the present deputy governor. And I was there again for El-Rufai. So I would never have thought that these two gentlemen, for once, will ever fight. And guess what? The present deputy governor, Balarabe, was the immediate chief of staff to El-Rufai. So what has gone wrong? I wouldn't know. That was why I told you, because I asked Obasani just 2 months ago in April. I said, what is going on? He gave me his own background. But I've learned not to judge matters by looking at one side, because a one-sided coin is a bad tender. I haven't heard the side of El-Rufai. But I would want to believe that a State House of Assembly should be left alone to do its own job, take its own decisions in accordance with the law. But if they are being teleguided, that would be too bad for Nigeria and democratic development. It doesn't deepen or widen the scope, the plenitude, and the amplitude of democracy.
Because many have also seen a similar page play out in different states in this country, for two persons who were close, predecessor, successor, and things happen. For this particular case, where do you see this headed? I mean, is it early in the day? Because if the House of Assembly has adopted that recommendation that they probe the former governor, what could possibly be the case? Because many hypothesize saying the intention might be what? Indict him, stop him from something. What could it possibly be?
I'm not a Nostradamus, the man who saw tomorrow. Nor am I the oracle at Ile-Ife that will go gaze into the future to pronounce the next all need to be. So I wouldn't be able to know what the outcome will be. But I think that whatever happens, El-Rufai must be given his right to fair hearing. The Assembly has just merely made a recommendation and told the governor to implement it. The governor may look at it and feel, well, this is not worth the energy and the time. Let's face others may say 423 billion naira. They are accusing him of. It's not a small amount. Yeah. Let's dig in. So whatever the outcome will be, and don't forget, El-Rufai also has his own fundamental rights to protect. For example, he may decide to go to court to challenge the indictment itself. Maybe you could say he was not given a fair trial. He was never called. I don't know whether he was called to come and defend himself.
I think they said some of their former officials appeared, and then they had the documents. Yes. They did a good job in terms of last service.
It depends on whether El-Rufai himself was called. If he was called and he refused to appear, fair hearing would have been given, because you cannot force a person to come and enjoy his fair hearing. The bad thing is, was he called? Was he duly invited? Was he given an opportunity to defend himself? If he was, and he chose to stay away, that's another ballgame. So because I do not have all those details, it becomes peremptory for me to go.
What if he wasn't? What if he wasn't, and then his agents, I mean, the commissioners there were called? Can they be taken as the same thing?
No, you don't indict a person by proxy. No, you don't. Particularly in a matter that has criminal connotations. You can't do that by proxy. So it has to be the person. If you are indicting the aides, that's for them. The very man involved. That's why I'm saying, was he given a fair hearing? If he was, that's another thing.
I mean, Mr. El-Rufai has been through a lot. Remember when the ministerial screening was going on? Yeah. And then you just mentioned these cases before. It just feels like a lot keeps happening in his backyard, so to speak. Is there any way that he can? Should he just carry on as is? Should he continue like this? Because it does feel like there's acrimony everywhere that he has been in. As governor, and then when he came out, he was on the list. Remember, he was on the list for ministerial screening, and then it was turned back. I think he was the only one, really, that had to go through that as well. And then now an indictment from a person who used to be his friend. Yeah. What's really going on here?
There are some people.
You're friends with him. What's happening?
No. There are some people who are controversial. If they do a little thing, it resonates everywhere. From the time he indicted Obasanjo in his book, whom he later worked with and all that. I wouldn't know. It does appear that the environment is quite toxic, really. It's quite toxic. I think it has to do with local politics. And don't forget that politics is local. think it has to do with also 2027.
Oh.
Politicians look to the next election. They don't look to the next dividends of democracy. As they are winning, after spending 1 year going around, they start campaigning. Campaigns have already started for 2027, even at the presidential level.
Oh dear.
That's why I have said we don't practice democracy, which was beautifully defined by Abraham Lincoln on 19th November 1863, during his Gettysburg Declaration as government of the people, for the people, and by the people. I say we practice electionocracy. That's what I call it in my neologism called Ozekpedia, modeled after Wikipedia, Legapedia. I say we practice electionocracy, which is do one election, look forward to the next election.
What threat could El-Rufai possibly be posing to 2027? What threat could he possibly pose to 2027?
It's not necessary that he will go for governorship, for example, because he has had his 2 terms. But he will be interested in who comes there. Oh, yeah.
Well, I think Ayo has a few questions for you as well.
It's interesting that, I mean, we're talking about this now. By the way, I don't even know. Sometimes I don't know how you will handle all the titles, Prof, High Chief, SAN, but, you know, that's not what we're talking about right now. You know, this issue, let me begin with from where you started, when you said what God has joined together, only politics can put asunder. I like to look to the future, Prof. How welcoming would this kind of scenario be for young people who want to get into politics, but they are afraid of these kinds of things? I remember, I think it was Chief Lamidi Adedibu who was quoted, late Chief Lamidi Adedibu, who was quoted as saying that, look, if you don't want what happened to your mom in 1865 to come out, don't go into politics. And now this is the kind of thing that you are. And even now you are saying that we're not practicing democracy, we are practicing electionocracy and the rest of it. So how should the young generation be looking at what is happening right now? I'm trying to foray into the future, Prof.
Yeah, I think the youth should not be afraid of going into politics because of what is happening. Rather, they should try to change the narrative and redefine the landscape. Because politics will continue to be politics. The Adedibu you referred to was the one who introduced politics of Amala. We have politics of Amala, politics of Begiri. You have politics of the stomach. You have politics of infrastructure of the stomach. I call it politics of Omisagwe and politics of Ukpoka in my own Ozekpedia neologism. So the truth is that the politics of Nigeria has never really been for the common man and common woman. Wow. It has never really been about how we develop our country and our state.
Wow.
It has always been me, I, and myself. Me, I, and myself. That's never been about the people. If it were about the people, why would Nigeria, that was in the same place with India, got her independence in 1947, 30 years later, Nigeria. Today, India manufactures aircraft, except the turbine engine. They do their own cars, one of the biggest industrial hubs in the world. Where are we? Where are we? The handkerchief in my pocket here is from Singapore. So how have we used politics to develop Nigeria? It's an embarrassment. But I wouldn't say that the youth should now be afraid of going in because of what is happening. Rather, they should dare it, go in, and change the narrative. And shame our generation. But I do not know whether the youth are ready for that. I see them more on the social media. They want to be essays and PAs.
Yeah. Well, on that,
it's sad.
Yeah. Well, I guess the future will tell. But to this particular issue, where do you see it going? How do you see it ending? And what would you advise both parties to do?
I'd rather say let the law play out. I believe in due process. I believe in due process. Let the law play out.
You don't think a political solution would help?
There's nothing impossible about politics. What? Politics is defined as the art of the possible. It's a game where you tell a person to go to hell in such a way that he looks forward to the journey. So there are no permanent friends or permanent enemies in politics. You'll be surprised that by tomorrow you will see them eating together, dancing together. PDP, APC, two sides of the same coin, for example. Those ruling today were all the big players in PDP. So in politics, there are no permanent friends or permanent enemies. I won't be surprised if by tomorrow you see them come back together again. And that is why I'm always warning the people. Tread softly. Don't join these people to fight their wars, because they will laugh at you later. They will come together as state captors, while you will be the one on the ground.
Well, speaking about the youth, Prof, quite a number of them don't understand the rationale behind why we had to resort to the old, which is now new, national anthem. They just want they seem to be lost in the thing. They thought two options: either we modify what we had before, or even if we're going to go with the old one, but we adopted the old one. You played a key role at that time too in the conference. I think part of which got you another famous name many have forgotten, the Cicero.
The Cicero of the 2014 conference.
Exactly. So
was conferred on me by the conference leadership, 2014. Yeah.
And they seem to have acceded to what you had suggested at the time.
Yeah, because that time I would say I played the role of a Nostradamus, the man who saw tomorrow. So what the National Assembly did last week, with the president assented to on the 29th of May, was what I saw 10 years ago. Let me educate us further on this. A lot of Nigerians do not know the difference. They have criticized the reintroduction of the old national anthem, for example, on the ground that it was composed by Britain, a foreigner. Miss Bender, Francis Bender, and the music was sung by Lillian Williams. But they do not, they say, why do we criticize the name Nigeria? Niger area, as named by Miss Flora Louisa Shaw on 8 January 1897 in an article she wrote in the London Financial Times, that is because she was a foreigner, not necessarily. This one, that was because she was a foreigner. And she posed the name on us. We didn't agree to be called Nigeria, right? But in this case, a panel was set up pre-independence. Entries were invited from across the world. It was headed by Fela Showande, a great musicologist who trained in London. Panel of 6 was a Nigerian from Abeokuta. He headed the panel. And entries were received from all over the world: United States, UK, Senegal, Cyprus, Ghana, all over. And entries ended 31st March 1959. The prize was £100 for the best. It must be in English. Frances Bender won it. She donated the £100 to the Red Cross. She was a staff of the Federal Ministry of Internal Affairs, Labor and Welfare. Then for the composition, Lillian Williams won it. And she won £1,000. So it was a contest thrown open to the whole world. But for the flag, the Nigerian flag, it was to be only by Nigerians. And Michael Akinkumi won it. She was a student in England. So the entire national anthem was therefore indigenous, done by Nigerians, midwife by Nigerians, or like the name Nigeria. Now, Having done that, we got that national anthem, which has the gusto, the gravitas to move Nigeria forward. But suddenly we came in 1978 with Arise, O Compatriots. At the 2014 National Conference we are talking about, made up of 492 members, and I think this is where Nigerians should continue to give credit to that 2014 National Conference, headed by late Justice Idris Legbo Kutugi of the Supreme Court, and Professor Bolaji Akinyemi was his deputy. I got up at the plenary session to move a motion that we reintroduce this old national anthem. It was hotly debated, and the 492 delegates, by way of consensus,
I remember this.
Agreed.
They stood up and they started singing.
Yes, they all, thank you.
Yeah,
they all stood up.
They started singing.
It was spontaneous. I'm not a nightingale or a Fela Nicola Bokuti or a Michael Jackson. But you see, listen to the lyrics and the meaning.
Okay, but you know, I want you to be able to talk about why it was changed. Because I think it's the historical context, maybe, that many people, there are two things. The historical context, many people don't have that.
That's what I'm giving now.
And then secondly, it's something that I've seen in an article that you wrote, which is that for many people, this hasn't put food on my table. Why is this important to me?
Well, nothing good comes too late. Why is it important? It's important because a national anthem, like a national constitution, is the identity card, is the birth certificate of such a nation. So it is very important. It can inspire. A national anthem can inspire. It can also kill your morale. For example, if you listen to the lyrics, listen to them. I will try with my hoarse voice. That's why I say I'm not a nightingale. Say, Nigeria, we hail thee, our own dear native flag. Though tribal tongue may differ, in brotherhood we stand. Nigerians all are proud to serve a sovereign motherland. That's one. The second one now talks about the flag. Our flag shall be a symbol that truth and justice reign in peace or battle honored. And this we count as gain. To hand to our children a banner without stain. You get that? We didn't leave out God in all this, talking about the youth, about the banner, about coming together. We brought in God. O God of all creation, grant this our one request. Help us to build a nation where no man is oppressed. And so with peace and plenty, Nigeria may be blessed. So resonating that in 2 years later, I wrote this book. I will leave a copy with you. Nigeria We Hail Thee, at pages 278 to 281. You will see the argument here and all that. So, resurrection of that national anthem is good for us. It moves us forward. It generates interest. It makes us to know that though tribe and tongue may differ, but in brotherhood, we must stand. That reminds me of the 1942 discussion between Dr. Nnamdi Azikiwe and Ahmadu Bello, the Sardauna of Sokoto. Zik said, Ahmadu, let us forget our differences Ahmadu Bello said, no, we cannot forget our differences. We must recognize our differences. You are Igbo, Easterner, and a Christian. I am Fulani, Northerner, and a Muslim. So we are different. It is in realizing our differences that we can decide to work together. So that took the argument, therefore, beyond late sage Chief Obafemi Awolowo's view that Nigeria was nothing but a piece of geographical expression. Which Tafawa Balewa later added that Nigeria was a piece of historical mistake. But we were trying to get to nationhood, which is what we are still yearning for today. We have not gotten it, mind you, nationhood. If you go around on weekends, you will see village unions, tribal unions, holding their meetings everywhere. How many times do you see Nigerians coming to meet as Nigerians?
So, but isn't this anthem going to be lost with more people? Because many are also of the view, in fact, you get some people now who say, look, I'm not going to stand and sing or identify with that anthem because they feel that perhaps certain things are just out of place and then it won't achieve the kind of results which in 2014
they are being hypocritical. They are being hypocritical. Why do I say that?
Yeah, why?
Before last week, of course, I went to the National Assembly also on the 27th of May to defend my stance on it, to defend the reintroduction, because I don't shy away from these issues. Those people are being hypocritical because whenever students were protesting or the youth were protesting, like during the NSAS, or whenever people feel despondent, what do they normally do? What did they normally do? They will break out and say, and sing the old national anthem, which is now the new one. They will suddenly say, Nigeria, we hate thee, to show that we are not happy with what is going on. We were better then. So whoever is opposing it now should learn to live with that beauty of it. Going forward, it's not necessary that we must forget history. The reason a vehicle has a large windshield in front, is to make you see the front, the future, right? But because you cannot forget the past, you have to have a small mirror by the side of the car to remind you of the past, of the back. Because today is the tomorrow you talked about yesterday. So whatever is good in history should be brought back. By the way, I don't know whether the federal government has brought back history now. History is it. If you don't have the history, you can't have it today. If you don't have it today, you can't have it tomorrow.
I mean, before we head over to, because Ayo is waiting on, there was a question I asked, just so people can understand, why was this anthem removed? Why did Arise, O Compatriots come up?
Oh, it came up during the military government of General Olusegun Obasanjo. Mm-hmm. They felt they wanted this one changed. They thought it was an English or a colonial relic. You know, we lowered the Union Jack on 1st October 1960 and hoisted the Nigerian flag. So some Nigerians there thought it was a colonially imposed anthem. But they didn't go deep into the history to know that it was actually autochthonous, indigenous, made by Nigerians, brewed by Nigerians, for Nigerians. The fact that these workers who were in the service of Nigeria were foreigners did not matter because entries came. They won. And it was headed, the panel was headed by a Nigerian. Fela Showande is here. 1959, March 31. So Prof, we cannot quarrel with it. If there's one thing I think this government has done right, I'm not a fantastic fan of the government, but if there's one thing I think they have done right, and they have gotten right, and I applaud them for it, is the reintroduction of this national anthem.
Okay, Prof, there is
because
something significant.
Meant us together.
My apologies for butting in. There is something significant that you said earlier, Prof, about the fact that, you know, this sense of history thing and something that will bind us together as a people. Looking at history, people still ask the question, where are we going as a people? So now you've talked about this national anthem as something that will bring us all together. When it does bring us together, where are we going? So two issues that I'd like you to speak to very quickly. Number one is the fact that there are those who think that it was hurriedly done. So very little, if any, significant communication happens. So taking ownership is a problem. Second thing that I'd like you to speak to is the vision of Nigeria. Where is Nigeria going? Because there are those who are wondering, how can we know where we are going? We know where we are coming from, but there is no direction. So we seem to be going in different ways, 36 states, 36 directions. So is this national anthem, in your view, significant enough to show us a national vision? So those questions are there. So those two questions, the question of communicating the idea of reintroducing this national anthem to Nigerians, and that of a vision for direction for the nation.
Well, I know that it was advertised that there would be a public hearing over the national anthem. That was how I heard. Nobody came to invite me especially. And if you are called, you should go and participate. If you do not participate, you should not cry later. Public hearing does not mean that you have to go to all the geopolitical zones over something like a national anthem. If you are talking about reintroduction or introduction of a brand new constitution, which I've always clamored for, because the present constitution is nothing but a schedule to decree number 24 of 1999, not made by the Nigerian people, not autochthonous, not indigenous, not legitimate. If you are talking about having a new constitution, for example, you must talk about going from not just geopolitical zone to geopolitical zone, but state to state, to allow Nigerians buy-in, as the 50 delegates did between May and September 1887 in America, when they met in Philadelphia, Pennsylvania, to have a more perfect union. And 39 of the states signed for a new constitution. And it was subjected to them for a referendum. If we are talking about having a referendum like that to determine the vision, the way forward, which even answers your second question, that the beginning will be to go forward and have a new constitution to identify what we really want. How do we live together? Well, we are like a flight to no destination without a compass. If we decide to come together and say, look, this constitution itself was militarily imposed. We need our own constitution owned by the people. We must be able to start afresh on a tabula rasa. It was at that 1887 conference in America, National Convention, that they agreed on certain articles of faith: presidentialism, republicanism, executive presidency, the doctrine of separation of powers between the legislature, the executive, and the judiciary, a doctrine that had been propounded much earlier by Baron de Montesquieu, a great French philosopher. They also agreed on judicial review. That convention threw up great federalists like Alexander Hamilton, George Washington, who became the first American president, and after whom Washington, D.C. is named, John James, Thomas Jefferson. Do we have such a constitution that we can say we made for ourselves? So the vision of Nigeria should start from critically discussing ourselves. We did that at the 2014 National Conference, 492 delegates drawn from all strata of the Nigerian society, the youth, students, women, men, people with disability, elder statesmen and women, the military, the police, civil service, diplomatic corps, traditional institution, the labor movement, private sector, public sector. We were all there. And we agreed on certain articles of faith. Over 600 recommendations were made. Only one of them we are talking about, the introduction of the old national anthem. They are there. Let this government dare go into those recommendations. Then you will see where Nigeria should be headed for.
Well,
I guess clear in our minds as to what we want or what we wanted. We should go back there. We cannot continue to pretend.
Well, what we are probably waiting for,
to
my
pretend.
apologies, Prof.
We can't get it right that way.
Absolutely. What we are, I think perhaps what Nigerians, a good number of people will be looking for is a vision statement that says, okay, this is where we are going and all of that. But, you know, perhaps that's a matter for future deliberation. But there is this also, this issue also, from the very beginning of our conversation with you, Prof, the issue of the judiciary has played out one way or the other. Now, you are not unaware of the proposed salary increase for judicial office holders by as much as 300%. How significantly do you see that ending the myriad of issues that come up from time to time concerning the judiciary in terms of conflicting judgments, alleged corruption in the judiciary and all of that? Do you see that putting paid to the issue, or you think it's just one of those things? How significantly do you see that affecting anything?
300% increase. Some people are romanticizing over it. What is 300% increase? Haven't our prices increased by 600, 700%? Your liter of fuel, how much were we buying it before now? Was it not about 120 naira? Today it's about between 600 and 800 naira per liter. Go to the market. Go and price tarodo. Go and price tatashe. Go and price tomatoes. Go and price onions. Go and price palm oil, vegetable oil, beans, rice. A bag of rice today is between 80 and 120,000 naira. So when the labor is asking for huge money, over 500,000, though it sounds humongous and too much, and the government is offering 60,000 naira, the first thing you tell the government is to say, sir, this 60,000 cannot even buy a bag of rice. So increasing judges' salary by how much? Well, it means that a judge will still earn how much? In 2018, Shehu Sani told us that his senator was earning 13.8 million naira per month. Senator Shehu Sani, my very good friend and brother, he said for that, I think he was suspended for talking too much. A judge in America earns about $73,000 per annum. At the current conversion rate, that's up to 106 million naira per annum. In Canada, it's about 80,000 Canadian dollar. It's over 110 million naira. In Germany, it's about 79,000 euro, which is over 140 million naira per annum. How much does this 300% still come to? Anyway, I can just call it a living wage, going by the spirally inflation. Have you not seen convoys of ministers? Have you not seen convoys of governors? Have you ever seen the Chief Justice of Nigeria, who has the third arm of government, the judicial arm? Have you ever seen him in a convoy? So it's garbage in, garbage out. If you pay peanuts, then you get peanut returns in terms of putting. So we have been talking about corruption. I like the way you use the word alleged. Is it real? Is it a fantasy? People continue to corrupt. Some judges have been indicted for corruption, some dismissed, some suspended, and all that. But I will still want to tell you that it is like a little fly in the ointment. The generality of judges are not corrupt. They work with the fear of God. According to law, they may make mistakes that are not corruption-induced. Right? This one goes on. So, if you want judges to keep away from corruption, pay them very well. A hungry judge that is receiving 500,000 naira a month, which is what most of them have been receiving, who has a wife, maybe 2 or 3 wives, who has children. The children want to go to good schools like yours. The politicians' children are all abroad in Ivy Leagues, the best universities, from Yale to Harvard to Oxford to Cambridge to Princeton. Then these people, the judge's child, is going to a local school at Gwagwalada, where they are singing Twinkle, Twinkle, Little Star, how I wonder what you are. Then you want the judge to retire to no house. He has no house to retire to. He can't even train his children. But then you want him to, then you will see a politician, a desperate politician, coming around, particularly during the election period, to pass through some bad egg lawyers who themselves are complicit, some of them, who must be fished out. Then you are offering that judge 200 million naira. If your whiskey once said if he saw 1 million naira that he will collapse. Former INEC chairman, when they accuse him of corruption, he said, me, if I see 1 million naira, I will collapse. Then you are offering a hungry judge who cannot pay his children's school fees, who cannot feed well, who has no house to go to, 200 million naira. It will take an Archangel Michael or Angel Gabriel from heaven to resist. I am not saying I should not be mistaken. I'm not saying they should be corrupt or they should therefore, because of their hunger, accept bribe. I'm not saying that. I should not be mistaken. They should still resist it. They should still try. I will say try. They should still try to resist it, knowing that it is iniquitous, that it will take them to hell, because you are taking bribe to do justice in a bad way, to mangle justice. I will still say they should resist it. But for God's sake, let us help them to resist it. We must help them to help themselves. That's the point I'm making.
All right, Prof, we need to wrap up, but if we could do this in less than a minute. Well, what about those who say that this doesn't, if we really want to impact the administration of justice positively, we need to look at the way judges are appointed?
I agree with you. Judges are, appointment is the real process, is what is the foundation. I do not believe, for example, that elevation to higher court should be automatic because you were in High Court or Federal High Court, you must go to the Court of Appeal. You were in Court of Appeal, you must go to the Supreme Court. Justice Nicky Toby, one of the best we ever had, was a professor of law in University of Maiduguri before he went to the bench. Justice Suputa came straight from the High Court to the Supreme Court. He became one of the best jurists, the oracle of the law that we ever had. So it shouldn't be automatic that because you were a judge of the High Court of Appeal, you must go to the Supreme Court. Give opportunity, a level playing ground for nominations and interviews. Bring in private practitioners who want to help the country. Bring in academicians, professors of law who want to help the country. Let them compete with those who are currently on the bench. Let the best go there.
Would you accept it?
So the process of appointment is therefore important. But also, let me also say this. I've had a lot of people criticize judges to say, oh, they allow their children to come there. I do not know whether they throw their way around. But let me also make this point very clear. A child should not be deprived of his legitimate aspirations in a country simply because his father is a judge. If he goes through a normal interview with other people and he passes, for God's sake, give it to him. Because not to give it to him will be making to suffer a disability because he's the son of a judge.
Would you step up if you were called upon to become a judge?
Let me shock you. I may not look it. I am 66 years old.
Wow.
Going to 67. So when am I going to serve? If you take me to the Supreme Court now, the retirement age is 70 years. So you want me to go there and deprive yoga people by going to spend just 3 years?
You said nothing good comes too late.
No, nothing good. No. Not at this time. No.
That's your quote.
Judges have a lot to do. I'm not cut out for that. For example, their reticence. I'm boisterous, I'm effervescent. I can't go to the bench and be caged in, for example. So you must know what you want. Yeah, Ozekpedia.
They don't have Ozekpedia.
So I will continue to educate, I will continue to lecture, I will continue to energize us, as I've always been doing. We cannot sleep facing the same side of the bed. Those who want to go to the judiciary, let them go. Those who want to practice and advocate like us, let them be. God bless Nigeria.
All right, we do thank you very much indeed for coming on. Professor Michael Zekoma, Senior Advocate of Nigeria and a visiting professor for Afe Babalola University.
And many other universities. Not just Afe Babalola University.
There you go.
Abia State University also.
Time won't even permit us to go there because business
there are 6 visiting professors to 6 universities by God's grace.
All right, there you go. All right, it's back to you now.
Well, yes. God bless Nigeria. Right there. Hello, welcome to another training day right here in Lagos, Nigeria. Let's get to the top stories that sets your agenda now. Yeah, we saw that big drop in oil prices yesterday, but we're seeing a bounce back this morning, $78.41 a barrel. See Brent trying to get back to that $80 level. This morning, 1.15% up. The U.S. grade there, that's $74.07, 1.12%. So we're seeing investors buy up those cheap prices. So yesterday, that's the contracts, the Brent's August contract is up by 89 cents this morning. Global benchmark, though, that's up about 1.78%. Well, from the oil market, let's get a check on the Naira. Yesterday, we had some weakening, 0.78% against the dollar, 1,488 Naira. That's for Anthem. That was a close for yesterday. Previous session, 1,476 Naira. So we're seeing weakening at the Anthem. But for NAFEX, on the flip side, that was up 0.66% to close yesterday, 1,476 Naira. 12 kobo. And definitely we'll keep our eyes on this market. The week's ending tomorrow. We'll see if most of those interventions are going to play a part, and maybe we'll get some kind of weekly gain for the Naira this week. So other stories now. The Center for Promotion of Private Enterprise has lauded the federal government's accelerated stabilization advancement plan for addressing key economic challenges faced by the real sector investors as ASAP. According to CPPE, this initiative tackles issues such as high interest rates, expensive port clearances, and hefty import duties, showing the government's commitment to investor concerns and stimulation of growth. CPPE stresses the importance of prompt implementation. Once the plan receives a presidential approval, we'll be waiting for that. For some company news now, we see Fidelity Bank concluded all necessary arrangements to raise a total of up to 127.1 billion naira by way of rights issue and a public offer. The plan culminated in a signing ceremony between Fidelity Bank and issuing houses at the bank's head office in Lagos. The combined offer is a part of the bank's strategy to increase its share capital base in compliance with the Central Bank of Nigeria's revised minimum capital requirement for Nigerian commercial banks. Take a listen.
Subsequent to CBN's recapitalization circular published on March 28, 2024, and shareholders' approval, Fidelity Bank PLC takes a bold step towards achieving the revised minimum capital requirement for Nigerian commercial banks. This informs the coming together of the board chairman and other board members of the bank, heads of issuing houses, and other professional partners to append their signatures to documents that contain the MOU that will enable them work together on the capital raising exercise. In a combined offer, Fidelity Bank hopes to increase its capital base with over 127 billion naira through rights issued to shareholders and a public offer.
The funds raised will enable us to expand our business franchise, improve our IT infrastructure, and render better customer service experiences. We are confident that these investments will solidify our position as a leading financial institution and unlock even greater value for our shareholders.
Stanbic IBTC Capital is the lead issuing house to the combined offer.
They've heard the story. They've seen, the benefits and the return that shareholders in the bank they've been getting over the years. The offer also provide them the opportunity to come and be a partaker of these good performance and good returns.
Fidelity Bank says it is the first among a full-fledged financial institution to undertake rights issue and public offer in its recapitalization plan.
Today we held our signing ceremony of our rights issue of 3.2 billion shares at 50 kobo each, and it's coming in at 9.25 kobo. And also for the public offer of 10 billion shares at 50 ordinary shares at 50 kobo each, and that's coming in at 9.75 kobo. And this shows that we understand the market and the Nigerian economy at large.
Besides Stanbic IBTC Capital, other joint issuing houses include Iron Global Markets Limited, Carry Asset Management Limited, AfriInvest Capital Limited, and FSL Securities Limited. Others are Future View Financial Services Limited, Iroko Capital Market Advisory Limited, Kairos Capital Limited, and Planet Capital Limited.
The Minister of Finance and Coordinating Minister of the Economy, Mr. Wale Edu, has introduced the Accelerated Stabilization and Advancement Plan, ASAP, aimed at tackling key economic challenges. Let's look at the inflation reduction angle, in the plan. Joining us now is Dr. Adesola Simoni, Senior Analyst, Financial Derivatives Company, joining us via Zoom. Great to have you on the show.
Thank you for having me, Ladi.
So we're seeing plans there to suspend import levies on food for 6 months. That's to ease inflation. We're seeing food inflation at over 40% at this time. How do you see this move by the government or the plan?
On one hand, okay, let's say it's positive, right? It's positive because the import levy is adds to the cost of some of these commodities. And previously, we've seen, since last year, we've seen the efforts by the government have not yielded much fruit, and so this is a welcome development. The removal of or this planned suspension of levies, particularly on staples, on fertilizers, I think that is positive. I think it will help, reduce the landing cost of these commodities and kind of reduce the pressure on prices. It would also kind of help to boost our domestic production of some of these commodities, which is positive.
Right, and definitely we see all the positives, but are there any risk here at this point? Because we see food inflation over 40%, but is there any angle to this that could pose some kind of risk? Because we know we're trying to support local production and all of that. Is that going to impact us negatively?
I think at the moment the risks are muted. I think in terms of local production, facilitating local production, the removal of levies on fertilizer, I think that is positive. We know what is happening in Ukraine and Russia, and that is directly affecting the import cost of fertilizer. So removing the levy, I think that helps with the cost of fertilizer. Also removing the levies on things like grain for feed, for poultry, I think that is supportive. Removing the levy on grains, on flour, which are like the staples, I think that kind of helps to reduce some of reduce the landing cost of some of these really, really important commodities. And that can really help to reduce price pressures in the domestic economy.
All right, and the proposed suspension period would be for about 6 months. Looking at the situation of things right now, is 6 months enough? Or should we be looking at maybe 2 years? 40%, over 40% food inflation.
Obviously, 6 months is a short period, but I think this is kind of like an initial phase, and then the government may extend it if needs be. But for the initial 6 months, I think it is positive. Also, remember, this is also revenue for the government, right? The government is kind of forfeiting this revenue, and it's important to note that the government, if you look at the budget performance of this year, it is quite lower than expected, particularly because of lower oil exports, lower oil production. If you look at the budget benchmark, oil production is put at 1.8 million barrels a day. By the moment, we are producing around 1.2, 1.3 million barrels per day. So there's that shortfall. So by foregoing some of these levies, this import levy for 6 months, the government is kind of trading off some of its revenue in order to reduce the hardship or help to improve the quality, the purchasing power, the quality of life of Nigerians.
Right, and definitely I hope government revenue is not impacted, so much, with this plan. But let's look at the global oil market this time. We're seeing prices close to our benchmark. That's oil price benchmark for the 2024 budget, at this time, $78. Big drop yesterday we saw in the oil market, but now we're seeing a rebound. There you have it, $78. That's the oil benchmark for the 2024 budget, with an oil production assumption of 1.7 million barrels per day. So are we in trouble here with these prices, these oil prices?
It's difficult to say at the moment because there are many factors driving oil prices globally. And like I said, Nigeria's oil revenue is more elastic to production rather than price. And so what we need to be more concerned about is what we can control really, which is our production. I mentioned earlier, reports from OPEC shows that Nigeria's production is around 1.3 million barrels per day for the month of April, which is quite low compared to our budget benchmark of around 1.78 million barrels per day. And if you look at the global oil space, the factors that drive it are pretty much out of our hands, right? Look at, we are hearing news about there are now expectations that the U.S. would cut their benchmark interest rates around either July or September, which is positive, which the market has viewed as positive in that it will stimulate economic activity and also stimulate oil demand growth. Already we are seeing Canada has led the pace in cutting their benchmark interest rate, and the expectations that many other high-income countries would follow suit. And globally, I think this is positive because it would kind of stimulate economic activity globally, and it will stimulate oil demand.
Right, and investors globally are just bracing for when the U.S. Fed is going to cut, interest rates in 2024. But let's just imagine that wake up one day, we see that the U.S. U.S. Fed has cut interest rates for the first time. What's going to happen to all these markets?
I think first that will be positive because it's kind of signals to the global economy that there's a change in the monetary policy stance. We are moving away from tightening cycle now to a loosening cycle. And if the U.S. cuts, I think many other high-income countries as well are going to cut their interest rate, and then that will globally reduce the cost of funds globally. So it will also stimulate investment, it will stimulate business activity, it will stimulate economic activity, and I think it's positive all around.
Right, it'd be great to see how that plays out, definitely. But who knows? It might not even happen, this year. But Canada is already leading the pack. We'll see if the U.S. will, at some point this year, cut interest rates. But let's look at the Naira. We're seeing weakness yesterday in the official window. What would you say is driving sentiment at this time?
I think at the end of the day, it's still the market is quite volatile at the moment. We are contending with issues of lower supply, despite the bumper interest rates and despite the high yields in the fixed income markets. We have a 365-day treasury bill around 25%. I think for foreign investors, I think there's still a little bit of anxiety on their path, despite what we are seeing, despite the hike in the sharp increase in monetary policy rates. We are not seeing a huge inflow of foreign portfolio investments. We are seeing trickles here and there. There's still also heavy demand on the market. I think once we begin to see globally a change in the monetary policy stance globally, I think that would help increase inflows of foreign capital into the economy, and I think that would help. Also, we are seeing the central banks still intervene in the market. Like I mentioned, in May, we saw the central bank intervene around $575 million US dollars in the markets in May, which is the highest this year, and this was higher than the interventions in March and April combined, which were around $340 million. And so I think the biggest problem is just thin supply, and I think that the central bank is doing everything that they can to improve supply and attract investments into the economy. But I think foreign portfolio investments are still a little bit anxious about the economy, particularly about repatriating their profits or their profits after their investments.
All right, Dr. Desola Simoni, always great to have your perspective. So much to unpack there. We'll see how the week closes for the Naira, definitely. Thank you so much for coming on.
Thank you for having me.
All right, we'll take a break now. When we come back, what other sources are available for the federal government? Talking about revenue. That's our next conversation. Do stay with us.
There's a lot of fear in the journey towards building wealth, especially in an ever-changing economy like ours. And you know why that is? It's because navigating the world of investments without facts and insights is like walking in the dark. But that fear stops now. Opportunities open up to you when you have a trusted guide. Someone with over 28 years of experience advising individuals, corporates, and governments to achieve their dreams through strategic and well-timed investments. That someone is AfriInvest. The journey of 1,000 miles is easier when you have a trusted guide and partner who knows the way. So, take the first step. AfriInvest, simplifying investments, creating wealth.
Well, this is a critical time for Nigeria as the government needs to shore up revenue to meet its obligations. Oil prices around the budget benchmark at this time, even though we saw some kind of bounce back with oil this morning. But yesterday's drop was really big. A lot of talk about tourism industry, how much can contribute to our GDP. To help us understand how to make it work is Adenike Macaulay. She's CEO Wakana, Nigeria. She joins me right here in the studio. Great to have you. Good morning.
Thank you for having me. Good morning.
Yeah, so I'm sure, let's go back now before we get into, the industry. 2 days. 2 days we had industrial action and we saw flights grounded. Paint a picture, for me. How much did that impact your industry?
So domestic airlines operations were grounded really 100% on Tuesday. International, not so much, but it still impacted a lot of them because they decided to err on the side of caution and cancel their inbound flights. So it was very disruptive. Upon that, I think NIBS was also down. So even transactions, even new transactions were impacted beyond the ones that were actually waiting to fly on that day. So it was really, really disruptive. We understand, of course, the reason behind it, but still the airline industry is one that is always deeply impacted when there are these sort of disruptions. Right. And yes, this was the experience in the last couple of days.
And if you want to put a figure to that, the loss, what, just an estimate, at this time to the industry.
On a daily basis, I would say the loss to the domestic airlines would be in the excess of 10 to 15 billion. 10 to 15 billion. On a daily basis. That's a big amount. Yes.
And we had that for about 2 days.
For 2 days.
All right, so
it was 1.5 days, so operations restarted yesterday.
And we know it's all about the minimum wage, at this time. I know your company, you guys pay salaries, definitely. And we're all trying to find that national minimum wage, that sweet spot. What would you say is the right number?
Somewhere in the middle.
Somewhere in the middle.
Between the current minimum wage, or what is actually currently being offered, and what is being requested by the NLC. In as much as we understand the reasons behind, I would say the reluctance and the pressure it will put on the national budget, what is being requested by the NLC. But again, if we consider a living wage, 30,000, 60,000, with the core inflation today, food inflation almost being up to 40%, there needs to be a bit of a jump from the current offer, which is 60,000. So yes, that sweet spot is what we hope that we find.
We're all trying to find that.
Somewhere in the middle.
Yeah, somewhere in the middle at this point. Yeah. All right, let's look at the industry, the tourism industry at this time. We're seeing Egypt Egypt led the pack in 2022 with about $12.2 billion. That's what the receipts, they made. Morocco followed, South Africa, Tanzania, Tunisia. And these were the top 5, in 2022. And definitely we see the government here. The government's trying to get, revenue in at this time. For the Q1 data, I think about 3%. Travel, tourism contributed about 3% to the GDP in the first quarter. So talk to me about where we are right now in the tourism industry in Nigeria.
There has been a bit of a growth, I would say, since COVID. The factors that impeded the growth of international tourism and travel, outbound tourism as we call it, is what kind of contributed to the growth of domestic tourism. What happened is with the increase in the cost, at least in the last year, with the airlines having their funds trapped for, I think, about 18 months to 24 months until the rate of exchange was floated and they started to repatriate a little bit, it forced customers to look inwards. Also, with the devaluation of the Naira, your Naira is able to go much further if you look inwards. However, despite this little growth that we've seen, which has also impacted domestic travel, if you look at the total number of passenger traffic last year, there was actually a bit of a shrinkage, but that was only on the international travel side. Domestic travel actually grew, which kind of supports the fact that there's been a bit of a growth when it comes to domestic tourism. However, this does not even start to scratch the surface with the potential that we have as a nation and what we can harness from tourism. We'll take some of these examples, South Africa, Egypt. What is driving the growth? What is driving this level of contribution from tourism to their economy? I usually like to speak about the 3 A's of tourism. The first is attraction. Why do you want to go there? These 5 countries have a very active tourism board, very active tourism ministry that is focused on positioning the country as the place they want to be to the sect of travelers that they want to attract. South Africa, for instance, has been on this for a while, and they remain consistent. My team just got back from a familiarization tour to South Africa, even though we're very familiar with South Africa as a destination, but they continue to reinforce. When it comes to accessibility, visas, the countries that they want to attract tourists from, even within Africa. South Africa just relaxed their visa regime for Kenyans. And last year we saw, I think, about a 75% growth of inbound tourists from Kenya to South Africa. So these are the couple of things that we need to fix in Nigeria. Accessibility, attraction, and also, so of course, infrastructural issues, security. But those first 2 are always the starting points for positioning your country for real contribution from the tourism sector.
Right, and definitely there's a cost of living crisis at this time. I remember, I've checked, travel fares, out of the country, and the economy I see today, the price for economy flight, that used to be business, at some point, So there's an affordability issue right now. Talk to me about conversations going on in the industry, so that people can, fly more.
I know.
As it was. It's really expensive.
Yeah, it is. I mean, it's a reflection of the value of the Naira as it is today. Last year, there was a bit of, I would say, an artificial inflation. Because of the airlines having their funds trapped, they decided to restrict the lower fare inventory from the market because they were forced to sell at the then official rate. So the fare that is today, let's say to London, $1,000. As of last year, the airlines were forced to sell at 463, which was 463,000 Naira. But they knew that they were probably not going to get their funds repatriated at 463, which meant that they started to hedge and restrict those lower ticket fares from the market. So you had the $2,000 fares available at 463, so you get it at probably under $1 million. Today, since the floating of the exchange rate, the airlines can now seek their funds and forex from multiple sources at the unified rate, which is closer to the market rate. So what that in essence means is today exchange rate is 1,500 to $1. That's what the airlines are selling at. Last year it was 463. Even if the airlines have taken the step to then open up all the inventory, today at 1,500, $1,000 is 1.5 million. That is why we're seeing this increase. Now, in terms of what to do to ensure affordability, things like, as a business, installmental payments, pay small. We recently also introduced Price Watch to ensure that customers can plan their trips better. Nigeria is a late bookers market, which means that most of the bookings come in pretty much 4 to 7 days before travel.
Right.
And when you're booking 4 to 7 days before travel, you're getting the most expensive, mostly the most expensive fare available. But if you're allowed to plan earlier, then you will get access to the cheaper fares. And that is what offering installmental payments, having the ability to watch the fare. Price watch means that you can set like an alert on a route and it continues to send you how the fares are evolving within a week. So you can decide, okay, this is within my threshold, I would book now. So those types of innovations.
Instrumental payments sound, good, but at what cost? Because there must be some kind of interest.
Yes. At the end of the day, if you book, let's say, 2 months prior to travel, you can get that fare up to 50% less than when you book 7 days to travel. So even if you're paying 3%, 5% for cost of credit, you're still getting it at 47% cheaper. So allowing customers to plan earlier by offering these payment options is what we as a business, of course, offer to travelers. But at the end of the day, cost of traveling internationally is expensive. We encourage customers to also look inwards, should our tourism sector continue to develop. And we've seen that with the domestic travel actually increasing. We've seen that.
Right. I know, conversations right now about how expensive it is, moving within, Africa. And we look at, continents like Europe. It's cheaper, to move around Europe as a European citizen. But in Africa, we're seeing that it's really expensive, moving within Africa. What do you think Africa should be doing, at this time to make travel within Africa affordable?
So part of the reason why travel within Europe is somewhat cheaper than what you get within Africa is capacity. You have more capacity available to travel from one country to another within Europe. We can't say the same particularly for West Africa. If you're trying to go to Equatorial Guinea today, there is no direct flight. When I was working with Lufthansa, I would have to fly to Frankfurt and then from Frankfurt fly to Equatorial Guinea within Africa. So a matter of investing in increasing the capacity and air connectivity within Africa is the first step for us to start seeing that reduction in fares. Of course, it's a topic of supply over demand. Today, there is excess demand over supply, which is why the fares are high. But it's not the same in Europe. There's excess capacity, both by air, by rail, by land, by sea. So there are options. Once we start to explore the options that we have, even beyond air, we would start to see a reduction to a level that should be affordable for intercontinental
within
travel.
Africa.
Yes.
All right, talk to me now, agenda setting. What should the Ministry of Tourism be doing right now? This government needs revenue. What's first steps to get revenue from tourism? Because we have a lot of tourism in Nigeria.
Absolutely. I think the first step is what has been done, establishing a Ministry of Tourism.
Right.
Prior to this dispensation, there was never a separate Ministry of Tourism. Now we have a Ministry of Tourism that is focusing on the policies that need to be in place to ensure that tourism is prioritized as one of the sources, the alternative sources to reduce the overdependency that we have on the oil and energy sector today. And a lot of policy review is going on, engagement with the private sector as well. I was interestingly on a subcommittee to review the existing Nigeria tourism policy. And it's great that now the private sector is being engaged, because a way to actually kickstart and jumpstart that contribution from the tourism sector is by harnessing the capacity and the opportunity and the resources that we have in the private sector. So we're at the starting point now, policy review being done with the private sector, also enabling public-private partnerships.
Right.
In South Africa, one of the things that they've done to, of course, increase accessibility within the city is the Gautrain project. When you land in OR Tambo, there is a train, high-speed train that can take you to Pretoria, it can take you to Johannesburg. That was a public-private project. So you see that the countries that are invested in those areas that would enable you to unlock tourism, attraction, positioning your market in the light that it should be seen to enable people who even want to come, accessibility, visas. Is your visa accessible? When you get in there, how do you come? Your public infrastructure. all of this needs to be in place.
I'm sure security plays a
of course,
massive role in there.
Massive role. So I was on the committee reviewing security and travelers' experience, really. And I can tell you that the Ministry of Tourism today is actually in that phase of reviewing the policy, setting the policy, but the most important thing is funds allocation to ensure that they're able to execute on what is in paper.
Fantastic. Well, we're looking for the contribution for 2024, and hopefully we get some good contribution going into 2025. Thank you so much for coming on.
Thank you.
Adenike Macaulay, CEO, Wakanao, Nigeria. Thank you so much.
For having me.
All right, so there you have it. We're going to be looking forward to the close today. That's for the local stock market. We get that move yesterday. There was a little bit of profit taking, definitely, but we still ended positive. That's for the market, 0.24%. That was a jump there. 132 billion, that was what was added. But who knows? Maybe it might be a positive week for the stock market right here in Nigeria. Definitely watch out for that. Thank you so much. That's it from me on Business Morning. I hand things over now to the Sunrise Daily team. I'm Ladi Williams.
Yes, welcome back. Laola Conde joins us next here, former presidential aide. Good morning. Thank you for coming on today.
Good morning.
So, minimum wage, living wage, national grid, shutting down. Those are some of the famous phrases this week that made the rounds. And even though they are back with that, I think they call them the tripartite committee, trying to see when negotiations continue today. I think they said by 2 p.m., so to speak. So who knows how all of this will pan out. But give us your impression of how this is progressing or otherwise.
Yeah. Well, I think that the intervention, I think the presidential intervention last week to give a directive to the Minister of Finance to crunch the numbers is a positive indication, that the president wants to take a closer look at the problem himself. Now, the other question would have been that I would have expected that right from the beginning of the negotiation, the federal government team ought to have the numbers already, right from the get-go, because that would have been the basis for the federal government team to show what is possible and what is not possible to the labor side. So while it's a good thing that the president said, look, give me the numbers, one would have expected that everybody already had the numbers, and the negotiation is on the basis of numbers. Now, having said that, I think the other thing to say is that, look, this idea of whether state governments or businesses cannot pay a living wage is something that we all should rise as a people to condemn. There's a business that cannot pay a living wage is not a business. A state government that cannot pay a living wage should not be called a state government. Some things are just basic. If we say it's a living wage, that means that is how people can live. So we can't go below a living wage. And again, the president was the one that gave us that clarity when he was campaigning and said, look, I'm not just going to be in the business of a minimum wage. We will make it a living wage. So it's important for us to stop this narrative of whether they can pay or not. They can pay. State governments can pay. I mean, look at the report that just came out, yesterday about the fact that in 3 months, some of the state governors have spent close to ₦1 billion just for entertainment. Just for entertainment. So why are we allowing them to say that they can pay? They can pay. Everybody has to look at their situation. If you need to cut off a number of things, cut it off and pay the people a living wage. It is how we treat people at the lowest level that shows our humanity or lack of it.
Okay, so 2 things pop up there, because over the years, ever since, maybe 3, 4, 5 years, when Labour had asked for a certain amount, many states didn't pay.
Yeah.
In fact, it was a couple of weeks ago that some states were saying, well, okay, we'll try and see if we can pay 30,000 naira. And of course, Labour thought this must be a joke. But the second part is, if Edo State is saying we'll pay 70,000 naira, right. So perhaps that feeds into your narrative, which then says they should be able to take a cue from how is it that Edo State is able to ensure that that is the case. Other states should be able to feed in to that same
scenario. Yeah, because you see, what it all seems to be happening, and this is not a problem of just the Tinubu administration. This is a problem that has been around for a long while. So this is not saying this is just a problem of one administration. What seems to happen is that there's a lot of bad governance that has gone on in our country, you know, regardless of who was in charge. And oftentimes, it is the poor people, it is the low-level people that take the short end of the stick. Now, that would have been easy to tell as a story if you also saw the same level of austerity by the high and the mighty. But you don't see that. You don't see them suffering in any way. You don't see them making any kind of sacrifice. And every time they say, oh, look, you guys have to sacrifice, you know, we're not going to be able to pay this because there's problem. No. The time has come for us. And good thing, the president was the one that gave us this living wage. Good thing, the time has come for us to sort it out. And we can sort it out.
Can it compel states?
Now, so, yeah, to the other point. So when we had the 30,000 naira, this was a law. It was a law. You know, it has to be a law. So we need to go after the governors who are not paying. Well, it's because it's the same political elites, and those guys get along regardless of what we say, especially when the people who are involved don't keep their eye on the ball. If the law says that you should pay a minimum wage, and you have 18 states who don't pay the minimum wage, something should happen. So there should be a consequence.
That's the thing. So what can happen? Because the easy will tell you, don't forget, state governors have got immunity. So how should that be approached?
Well, it's the state government now, you know. So and it's the law that says that you should pay. This is why they're making it a law, so that people can be compelled to do it. So there must be consequence for those who don't do the law.
So Labour should test the law.
I don't even think it should be just Labour, you know. So when a law is made, it becomes a law. So National Assembly is an act. So the government lawyers should test the law. The Labour itself should test
federal government lawyers.
Yes.
Or
anybody can go to court, I'm sure. You know, the Attorney General himself can choose to, just like he has done on the case of local government autonomy. Right. You know, he has gone to court. They can go to court. The Labour themselves can go to court. I think an average Nigerian worker who has a cause, you know, can also go to court. We should stop this idea of state government not being able to pay. That is not the problem of the Nigerian workers. It's not the problem of Nigerian workers. It's the problem of the state that hired the people and is now giving an excuse not being able to pay a living wage. But you see them do all kinds of excessive stuff. The time has come, and I think the leadership of TUC and NLC should keep their eye on the ball. This is the time to get a living wage. The president promised it. And to be fair to him, he seems to be, focused about it.
How much is realistic?
Well, I mean, I think that if you look at the table, since and Nigeria is very good with giving out information. we have a table of all the countries, even in Africa. So you have countries in Africa being able to pay $400 living wage, minimum wage. There are countries in this continent, $300, $200, and stuff like that. I don't see any reason why Nigeria should do less than $100. Just reasonable.
We keep talking about blocking the ways that these excessive spending is happening. But when we talk about it, it does seem like we're talking from a moralistic standpoint. Oh, your convoys are too many. You have too many PAs and SAs. But as much as those things are wrong and we're able to call them out, right, are they breaking the law when they do that? When they have excessive convoys, when they spend these monies on entertainment, like you said, right, did they break the law?
Well, so very, very good point. There is the moral point of our existence as human beings, and then there is the legal point of it. But I think in this matter, there is a connection, because that is why this is going to be.
So, is it possible for us to focus on the laws that enable them to do these things and change those?
Yeah. So
as opposed to compelling them morally. or to using their conscience, because I don't think they're going to listen.
I see your point. So that is why some people have been arguing on the need for a true federal constitution. Look, let's just say it as it is. A federation or a federal system of government is where you have a center and federating units. Now, those states that we have, as states, those are not federating units. They're not federating units. They were created by the military. You know, a military president sat up one day and said, yeah, we're not going to have 19 states. Now it's going to be 30 states. Increase it to 36. That was how we got here. So those are not federating units. We need a constitution where Nigerians will sit down and identify the federating units. In a multi-ethnic society, it has to be the peoples, you know. So we have this kind of ethnicity, you know, we identify all of them and everybody sits at the table and they say that, look, we want to form a federation. And on the basis of that, that is how you determine what the federating units are. And so those are the things that, in terms of your question about the legality of it, we have to go back to a true constitution. That's why I said that, look, one of the things that President Tinubu must do for Nigeria, at the very least, is that he must make sure that Nigeria has a true federal constitution. Many of these states, if they say that they cannot do what states are supposed to do, why are they states?
All right, there's another matter too that we will talk about, but I'd like to listen to this particular perspective and we will take it from there.
Categorically, that the president on his, as rightly, said, on the day he was sworn in, he said subsidy is gone. President was misunderstood, clearly. The last government, Buhari's government, did not make any provision for subsidy in the 2023 budget. Whether anybody said it or not, subsidy was gone. But the president, in his characteristic style of speaking truth, was to say, look, in the last 2023 budget, there is no provision for subsidy, so subsidy is gone. And I can confirm to you that subsidy is gone. But that doesn't mean that, from time to time, there could be strategic intervention from time to time. In the last 1 decade, there has been no investment in the oil and gas sector. Reason? The PIA took longer than expected to be passed, and so there was no stable governance regulatory framework. When this government came, we've been able to rekindle the confidence of the investing community. And I can assure you that between now and the end of the year, we'll do much more than $20 billion. I can assure you that. And the reason why this is happening is because investors now have confidence that there is a stable regulatory framework. The president himself has signed some executive orders that are targeted at assuring the public that, look, Nigeria is ready for business.
Well, that was the Minister of State for Petroleum, Rahina Kindokbobiri. So that subsidy narrative has been picked up upon by mainstream media, and which we also try to highlight. But today, different perspectives have also been out there. Take a look at The Guardian, for instance, where the lead story on the front page refers cautious optimism as FG unveils new fiscal deals to revive economy. Now, there's been a statement, though, about this one. Mr. Nunga has tweeted about leaked documents on fiscal policy proposals. He says they are not official. And this is part of this. One of the documents, he says, was titled Inflation Reduction and Price Stability Fiscal Policy Measures Order 2024. He says it's being shared as if it were an executive order signed by President Tinubu. The other is a 65-page draft document with the title Accelerated Stabilization and Advancement Plan, ASAP, which contains suggestions on how to improve the Nigerian economy, and it goes on and on. So, Lalo, this leads us to the question, which was also published in Business Day, about petrol subsidy, how the president, this government, is spending some money on petrol subsidy, which you have also come across this document, this reports.
Yes. I mean, so I think that it is, I mean, looking back at the fact that, one had worked in the presidency and I understand exactly how this must feel for people who have to manage public communication. It's a very tough one. I I would personally, join my own view to the fact that, yes, the president made a bold move in saying that subsidy is gone. And I don't think there is anybody that will doubt the fact that that is exactly what he wanted to do. And I guess it was done for quite a number of months, really. But I think it is very difficult right now to convince any right-thinking Nigerian that subsidy is not back.
Let me quote Business Day. In fact, their report was, in a surprising turn of events, the federal government has finally admitted Africa's biggest oil-producing country will be spending up to 5.4 trillion naira on oil subsidies in 2024. And it says this comes after months of repeated denials by government officials who insisted there was no subsidies.
Yeah, so it's very difficult for anyone to say now that there is no subsidy. It will just be a blatant lie, a blatant lie. There is subsidy. At some point, maybe NNPC is taking care of on that recovery. At some point, look.
Which is the other name they call it.
Exactly. The price at which we are buying fuel at the pump is not even close to the landing. Look, subsidy is back one way or the other. Okay? And I think it's useful for government spokespeople and ministers in particular to try and walk us to the point of how this thing had to be restored. Because indeed, when the president said it in May 29, of course it stopped, for a while, but then it came back.
When did it come back?
Well, it came back at the point when we saw that the prices, that we are being charged in the market does not match with the real prices. And IMF came out, Bloomberg reported it, a lot of international agencies,
but the price of fuel stayed the same.
Exactly, which is why we know that somebody is trying to make up the gap, which is not a bad thing by itself. But it just shows you, and indeed on Sunday at the Channel's TV interview, Mr. Edu lacked the courage to say subsidy is still here. He didn't say that.
He didn't mention it at all.
Yeah, I think Sheon asked him and he said, oh yeah, I mean, this fuel subsidy thing is an ongoing process, an ongoing situation, and he's trying to just manage what is clearly a difficult public communication challenge. But I would suggest to them that, look, you should own up to the fact that subsidy for now is back, but we're going to work our way to take it again. The truth of the matter is that the president removed the subsidy, and there was no subsidy for a while.
So it's
not a big deal if you have to bring it back for some compelling reasons.
So there are a couple of things there. From the public communication perspective, could it be that having announced it at that point in time, which many have touted and said, look, he's taking the boldest decision nobody tried, nobody took.
Yeah.
And so how are they going to backtrack now and say to the world, well, actually, it's back. And number two, if subsidy is back and they're paying it from several documents circulating, without an official announcement saying we're suspending a certain clause of the PIA. So if they are paying subsidy, are they going to be violating certain laws? Where's the money coming from if it's not been budgeted for?
Well, the part of the act, I think that one can be managed because the law is not made for, we are not made for the law is made for us. That is the easier of the two. I think the more important challenge is how to actually solve this problem on the long term. Again, we must give credit to the fact that the president was bold to say, look, let's remove this thing, as soon as we can.
Yeah, but that would appear to be a knee-jerk approach.
Well,
if it's coming back, and what then is the what's the guarantee that there will be a long-term solution? It means these guys would have said, we told you, we've had them by the balls now, so what can they do to us?
Yeah, you're right, and I'm just trying to be, honestly, I'm trying to be sympathetic right now to see how they can come out of this dilemma.
This is going to be one of the hardest things to explain to the Nigerian. Because at the heart of everything that is going on is the fact that the price of everything went up, because subsidy was removed.
And then you tell us it's bad.
And then you now tell us
and
it's
the
bad,
prices have
but
already
the prices have already gone up and they're not coming down. I don't know how they're going to do this communication.
From this table.
Well, I think that this ASAP plan, the Accelerated Stabilization and Stability Plan that Minister Edu is supposed to be bringing out, I think, if you look at it, a lot of people see quite a bit of hope in that document itself. Now, yes, you're right. A lot of people also think that it's 1 year late. That this is the kind of stuff that you should have put before the president, before he made that subsidy is gone kind of stuff. And you are right, Kayla. Yeah, people have suffered, by the fact that, now Naira has depreciated and all kinds of stuff, and it has led to hardship. Okay? But what I think is important now is for the government to try to build trust from the ruins. And because that's life. You build from the ruins. So you say that, look, this is what we wanted to do because it is the right thing to do. And we tried to do this for a number of months. Now, we couldn't continue because of this. Yeah, of course, people will say, hey, why didn't you know before? Yes, and they must take responsibility for that. But going forward, it's important to level up, to come clean to the Nigerian people so that whatever else you're going to talk about, they can believe you. Credibility of the president and credibility of the administration is at a very questionable point. And what they say and do going forward is how we know how they will resolve the credibility crisis.
One of the things that goes with this conversation, Mr. Akonde, is that we're only always looking at the federal government. When we began the conversation this morning, that's one of the things that Kayla mentioned, the fact that more and more people are giving a little more attention to the states, which you call, the federating units. And, of course, you have also hinted at the possibility that maybe some of them are actually not viable enough to stand on their 2 feet. But, you see, when we talk about government, a lot of times we give attention to the federal government. But the people live in the states, and the effect of whatever policy, be it the federal policies or state policies, hit the people directly. Do you see a role in terms of communication? Do you see a role for the states, the state governments themselves in this particular matter? We're talking about food earlier on, before we came back on air. My colleagues and I in the studio. We're talking about the fact that the logistics of food from Kano or from anywhere in the villages to the major cities, those are the issues that increase the cost of production, the logistics of it. But hey, who is talking about that? And everyone is going to talk about, okay, dollar doesn't affect the price of tomato. Of course it does. So do you see a role for state governments in communicating with the people to ameliorate the pains, at least to get some buy-in for government, be it federal or state?
Thank you so much, Ayo, for that question. And you are entirely right. People live in the states, and a lot of the attention ought to be on the state governments and the state governors. And I think we are beginning to shift that narrative, not as much as we ought to, but I think it's beginning to shift. Now, what normally happens is that, from my own experience in the presidency, the president, federal government wants to do what is right in terms of getting the states to take responsibility. So, for instance, President Buhari also pushed the idea of local government autonomy, and then the states went to court. And then, the governors will come and say, no, that can't happen, and then everybody mellows. Now, this president has also started the same thing, and the Attorney General is in court in terms of, the financing of the local government economy. Local government autonomy, I'm sorry. Now, the important thing is to stay on course on that matter. I think this administration has shown that it wants the governors to show more responsibility. Clearly, last week when he was meeting leaders from Arewa, I think the president said it again. Now look, talk to the governors. A lot of this responsibility is with the governors. And that's why we need to keep hammering on that point. They have resources. They can do internal generated revenue. And in spite of the fact that we have had a significant portion increase in their allocation from the federal government because of the fact that there is now more cash coming in, we haven't seen in many instances that kind of impact in the life of the people, in what the states are delivering. And so it's important to keep an eye on the states and to hold them responsible more and more. You are entirely right, and I agree entirely that we have to keep our eye on the ball and ensure that the state governments do what they're supposed to do. But I must also restate that, look, if we are very serious, and we ought to be very serious, most of those states cannot qualify to be federating units. How did we get to 36 states, by the way? We got to the 36
just a quick
states
one. Right now, that's where we are. Yeah. We are 36 states according to the Constitution and according to the number of governors that we have. So one other question before we go for you. Do you see any significant collaboration between the federal government in terms of its policies and the states? When the president makes a pronouncement, of course, these things will dissipate in states or affect people directly in the states. Do you see a collaboration between the federal government and the states?
Well, so there are structures established for that collaboration to take place. Now, whether that is being done to the optimal level is a different conversation altogether. And I think that a lot more can be done. Now, what normally happens is that state governors will continue to hide behind the canopy of, oh, it's the federal government, oh, it's the president, and that's why I said that those of us who are who are outside, especially in the media, the CSOs, the people, we must continue to raise and call attention to the responsibilities of the state governors. They are clearly, for the most part, trying to avoid, and they find a very easy way to do it by just pushing the ball back to the federal government. And to my point, I think if we're going to have a new constitution, I believe that we have to look at the issue of federating units. We cannot have a federating unit by a decree of a military. If that is what we have now, yes, it is. But who says we can't change it? We should change it. And that's why the quest for a new federal constitution is such a big deal, because we cannot continue to have the people have the short end of the stick because of these structural imbalances and the irresponsibilities of some of our political leaders.
Well, just going through Mr. Ononuga's tweet, what he says, look, yes, the president received a copy on Tuesday. One of it was written draft. None of them came from official channels. And these matters are ongoing. They should cease from discussing it. And then that quote where he says, look, that which the government is trying to hide is news. That famous definition of what is news.
Mr. Ononuga taught us how to scoop news stories when he was the editor.
He used to be one of us.
Yeah, I mean, he was my editor-in-chief in the news. If he were the editor and I got this story, he will be giving me all the thumbs up for it. It's called a scoop. So this story is out.
I cannot give a thumbs down then. So thank you for coming on.
Thank you so much.
For the former presidential aide. Well, that is the show today. Tell us what you make of all of this. We'll see you next time. I'm Chamberlain Uso. Goodbye.
I'm Kayla Magwa. Have a great day ahead.
And I'm Aya Makide. Make it a productive one.